Well, it was only last week that we were celebrating the craziness and unpredictability of the Championship in our Sunday review video. Guess what? I'm going to do the exact opposite this week because there were a few signs from the established order this round that they may be getting their you-know-what together, and we may start to see them dominating towards the top of the table. I'm talking, of course, about the recently relegated teams, the parachute teams, who are mobilising. And I know all the fans of the other teams, their hearts will bleed the world's smallest violin, but these teams do have slightly unique issues and different issues to the rest of the league that they have to sort out during August, and that has been the case for all of the parachute teams. But I think they might be all ready to go, and some of them might be already going, despite not being in the top two yet. So before we look at all the parachute teams, let's just say a magnificent well done to West Brom and Sunderland, who are keeping them out at the moment. Blackburn also in the top six at time of recording. They have not yet played against Preston. Let's talk about Burnley, who just got the job done, didn't they, against Portsmouth. 94th minute winner from Brownhill. You can look at it a couple of ways. If you're playing well, people say, well, good teams, they get last minute goals. And if you're not playing well and you get a last minute goal, you're finding a way. As I sort of alluded to, so much change at Burnley. They're a little bit different than all the other teams through August, as I think they had the most bloated squad and the most players that needed to be sold. A lot of churn for Burnley, but it's all done. The window's shut. International break gone. Away you go. Now a little bit of a sense of that timing with, frankly, all of the parachute teams. All that change, guys. 13 points from the first 6 games. You'll have that over the fabled 2 points per game mark, where you want to be at any point in the season. And the further you get to the end over that 2 points per game mark, the more extremely likely you are to be in that top two, unless you get an outlier season like we got last season, though Leeds didn't quite hit the 92 that 2 points per game will bring you. Back-to-back wins for Burnley. And the other thing to point out here, Burnley have already played away at Luton, away at Sunderland, which is looking like it's going to be a really hard game this year, and away at Leeds. So when we're towards the end of the season and we start doing those who's got the hardest fixtures videos, remember this right now, because I think those 3 games are going to be ones you do not want towards the end of the season, and they are all already gone for Burnley, who are very nicely positioned and looking ready to go. And they've barely scratched the surface, haven't they, on the Scott Parker era. Sheffield United have well and truly scratched the surface with Chris Wilder. This is take 2 for Wilder after an immensely successful first take. And they're looking good, aren't they? 3 clean sheet wins in a row for the Blades. They beat Darby. They are undefeated. And they are at 2 points per game, in spite of the normal chaos, which we can apply to all of the parachute teams, and a minus 2 point deduction. That's made little or no difference. They've kind of put themselves in a really smart position within 6 games, in spite of that minus 2. So brilliant start. The thing I'm seeing at Sheffield United, we're going to talk about teams that haven't hit their stride yet. Gustavo Hamer has very much hit his stride. And if you're looking at a kind of barometer for a player who's really having the most influence, I think, and the sort of player who can do what Somerville didn't do it all season for Leeds last season, but he was in cheat code mode for a while. The ultimate example is probably Buendia for Norwich, isn't it? Where you have this force of nature player that just drags his team forward. What I've seen from Hamer at the start of the season has been of that ilk, and if he keeps this up, he is going to carry that team on his back, and they've got plenty of other good players as well to go alongside him. Brilliant free kick from Hamer. 4 goals already for him. He is a free spirit, having a lovely old time, and Sheffield United are right up there in 4th spot, despite, as I say, starting on minus 2 points. Leeds United, I mean, they're in that mode now at Leeds where because Farke didn't go up last season and because the start of this season had that kind of mini meltdown after the Borough game in the EFL Cup and then the defeat against Burnley, it's going to be the case that Daniel Farke, pretty much every time he doesn't win a game, is going to be under suspicion from the guys who don't think he's the right man in the dugout in that Leeds fan base. It's just gotten a bit split, and he just needs to bang out the wins, and maybe that will go away. I dare say it won't. For those that don't believe, they're not going to believe, and they've probably already reached their conclusion. But it's a good start, isn't it? I know, bit of a what's the word? Loose first couple of games, wasn't it? With the 3-3 against Pompey, which they should have won. And I think they just battened down the hatches and everyone shook hands on a 0-0, didn't they, at West Brom? The Burnley defeat was a problem, of course, because that's against a sort of key rival, and it's one of these head-to-heads. I think, is it? No, 2 head-to-heads. Burnley have had Luton as well as Leeds, but they are 1 point off the 2 points per game, despite a little bit of chaos and a little bit of a meltdown at the start of the season. 3 wins in 4, despite that Burnley defeat. 4 clean sheets in 5, and yes, we can probably say, because Leeds are the only Year 2 parachute team we're talking about, that the number of really high tariff, high ticket players they were left with to actually utilise, they'd already had that first summer where the main bulk go, don't they? And then they retained some big stars in terms of Somerville and Nonto and Ruter and Gray. And of those 4 players, only Nonto is still at Leeds. But if you look in the win over Cardiff, yes, Cardiff are bottom, and Leeds, they did half and half, didn't they? But they had total control of that game, didn't they? Come on, missed a penalty, played against 10 men. Could have been 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, whatever. Maybe they could be a little bit more brutal in front of goal. And that was an issue last season as well. Individual quality needed, but then maybe only individual quality was getting in the goals. And you can't totally rely on that all the time. Ramazani, Tanaka, Schmidt, all involved yesterday. So they have kind of done the squad churn. And what I will say is I don't much like their fixtures coming up. I think Leeds have actually got a pretty difficult run through to the next international break and then out the other side. So if they can get through this, it might not be the 2 points per game, but they're just underneath. I think they're going to be really well positioned to have another good run at this season with, and I get the split on Farke, but this is a manager who has done this twice before and missed out in the playoff final last season. Finally, Luton, who are obviously way down the table. We're talking about Burnley 3rd, Sheffield United 4th, Leeds 6th. Luton have had by far the worst start. They're down in 15th, but there are signs again here with all of these teams. Back-to-back wins, and they've kind of toughed it out, ground it out, haven't they? Went to Millwall, clean sheet, victory, hang on in there, take the 3 points, get out the den, go home with your points in your back pocket. And they went behind against Sheffield Wednesday, had to come back again, like Leeds, played against 10 in the end, but they ground it out again. And now you see the start of a winning run. You also see the centre-backs are there. They weren't at the start of the season, particularly in that opening game. Was it against Burnley, where they really got taken to the cleaners, didn't they? Nakamba is back. He's a big influence in central midfield. And Adebayo and Morris haven't quite looked right. Morris looked very grumpy on the bench at Millwall, didn't he? But off the bench today, 2 goals. I wonder if it's the start. I don't know whether there was interest in the window and unsettled players. But you've got 2 strikers there in Morris and Adebayo who you almost expect them both to be up around the 20 goal mark, given what they've done in the Championship before and what did in the Premier League last season as well. Double figures for Morris certainly last year. They look ready to go after a really shaky start. Again, we got to pay big respect to West Brom and Sunderland, who are currently our top two. If Blackburn win against Preston tomorrow, they will also be above all of those parachute teams, those recently relegated teams that I have just talked about. So the question really, I mean, the title of the video says, are big boys about to take over at the top of the Championship? My question to you is, can anybody hold them off? Because it's all very well saying, no, they're not going to do it. It's not going to be predictable. Money's not going to talk. But let's be honest, last season was weird for a lot of reasons, but it took a complete freak season from Ipswich, didn't it? Flying through, double promotion, extraordinary managerial performance from Kieran McKenna to split an extraordinary bunch of year one parachute teams. These year's teams don't have the Premier League tenure that Leeds, Leicester, Southampton did between the three of them last year. But still, we know the cliff edges, we know the chasms, the gaps, and we know they seem to be getting bigger each and every season. So could it be West Brom, Sunderland, Blackburn? We got Swansea up in 7th. Great win for Norwich today as well. Middlesbrough always linked with the top 6. Flattering to deceive. So Coventry at the moment. Who can stop them? And am I right that there are signs now that all of those 4 clubs we've spoken about in detail today are ready to go? Window closed, international break done, difficult start over with. Away you go. Stick your foot down, maintain speed, keep the car on the road, head for that top 2. Only 2 of them can fit in the top 2, we do know that. And one of them's not getting promoted for sure, even if we do get a really predictable top 6 and playoff picture and playoff final. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, do not worry. There will be plenty of talk about the rest of the Championship teams on the channel in the shape of the Championship Check-In podcast with Sam Parkin and myself on Monday, where we'll get into all of the other teams. So don't worry if you club hasn't been mentioned today. They will be, don't worry, on Monday. Get involved with that and get involved with a couple of fun and games videos we did at the back end of the weekend. We updated our Championship manager rankings and I've identified 10 young players to watch in the division. But please, if you're going to comment, look at the criteria I've used before you do. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you for the Championship check-in on Monday.